Hello, welcome to another exciting episode of To the Edge. This is the fourth of 4 episodes focusing on family problems, and the second with our guests. They are Natasha Hatalski as Detective Christina Elliott.
Hello.
Wendy Hartman as Detective Rebecca Ellison.
Hi.
And John Samela as Chief Alexander Hudson.
How's it going?
And with me, as always, is my co-host, Mike Messier.
Great to be here, Roland. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I'm Roland Korshidians out of the host. I forgot to drop my name. All right, so picking up where we left off last time, how much has 2012 Ellison changed from her 2044 self?
Well, in 2012, she has a mission, and that mission changes 30 years later. She's been through a lot. That mission is no longer an option for her, and she has made a lot of choices over the decades that have affected who she is in the future, in her 70s. And in her 70s, she's really focused on self-preservation and just protecting her reputation. And she's the sergeant of the Boston Police Department. She has a lot more power and authority, and she kind of uses that to her advantage. I'll just say that.
Actually, for the benefit of people who did not see the last episode, because we shouldn't just assume that, can you briefly go into your characters again?
Sure. I play Detective Rebecca Ellison in the present day, and then I play her as the sergeant of the Boston Police Department 30 years later in her 70s. In the present day, she is brought into the show. She was actually brought on in the season finale of season 1, and she had a past romantic involvement with one of the main characters, Henry Soloway, and she's brought back in to help him at a time when he's going through a crisis, and she never really got over him, so that kind of affects some of the things she does.
I play Chief Hudson. He's in the future, 2044. 2044, right?
Yes.
Lost my mind. He's the police chief, sort of in charge of all the detectives. Her character is higher up, I guess.
That's right.
She despises.
More conflict, I love it.
Yeah.
Locking horns.
And I play Detective Christina Elliott, and she is currently a detective in the police department, and both of these people are my fine bosses, who I love and adore and revere. So, and her main job, her main task at this time is to investigate the cold case of Jennifer Grady, who has been murdered and then buried in the woods by her family.
And that's the young lady we met 2 episodes ago.
Correct.
Yes.
Who was on our great actress. This project is so engaging, and it's also very ambitious, which is what I respect about it so much. Is this is not just a, hey, let's hop in the backyard, bathe in some K-Rose syrup, and make a YouTube video. This is the real deal. This is very ambitious. The writing, Seth puts a lot of work into the writing. And how's it feel just as a person, just to say, hey, we're gonna shoot family problems this weekend, or we're gonna, have a family problems rehearsal, or what's?
It's an actor's dream.
Yeah.
I mean, Seth has written, he really believes in being the best and getting it right, as Natasha has mentioned. He believes in his scripts to be, he wants the scripts to be the most accurate they can be. He wants the characters to be the most authentic they can be. And he has opened up his home to several days of character development sessions and team building exercises and police training sessions to make sure that we can all achieve his level of excellence. He has a very high standard, and he wants to get the best from all of us.
Awesome.
And he also, one of the beautiful things about working with Seth is that he communicates with us regularly. So Wendy and I especially, I think, have benefited from this. We're on the phone with him all the time about just about everything. Every aspect of our characters, anything there's a question on. Sometimes if he has a question where he feels that I know the character now better than he does,
Sure.
He'll actually call me and say, okay, I need to talk to you about this aspect of your character and what's going to be happening going forward, and what do you think of that? And it provides us with this wonderful forum in which we can build these characters and live these characters and have a real say in what happens and how they're portrayed.
Do you give him some ideas that he might not have thought of and vice versa when you're talking about the characters?
Yes. Interestingly enough, there is one thing that I can mention that's for the future. There is, I don't know whether she will actually become an active character. I believe she might at some point. Her name is Carrie, and my character, when I was doing my character development initially, I had to figure out one of the things that really drove my character, because my character will do anything
Right.
to solve a cold case. She will find who murdered these children. And that's, the buck never stops with her. It's just, we will go and we will do this, and it will never end until I find out who did it. And one of the things that drives her, I determined for myself, was that when she was in high school, there was a girl who was 1 year up from her, who became her protector, who looked out for her, stood up for her. She didn't have a lot, my character did not have a lot of friends.
Right.
She was a kind of isolated, shy sort of person, and got picked on a lot and teased a lot, bullied a lot. And this girl looked out for her. Well, one day that girl disappeared. And there was no explanation. And in her mind, at least back at that time, there was, if not a cover-up, then there was never the type of investigation that there should have been.
Right.
And she tried to investigate back at that time, and of course had no success, because I mean, she was a child,
Yeah.
basically. Still, she was a teenager. She had no rights in this picture at all. But this drove her from that point on. She made a promise to Carrie that she would find out what happened.
Wow.
No matter what. And she will die trying if necessary. And that carried over and spilled over for her into all of these other cases. For her, all of these other cases are Carrie.
That's great. I mean, that's
And that
yeah.
will, and getting back to your original question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Getting back to your original question, she is going to come into play in the future for my character. So this is something that I created for my personal background, and I told this to Seth, and he thought it was really interesting. So as we continue to move forward, at some point, Carrie will probably come to be a factor in things and may actually become a character on the show ultimately.
I think that'd be terrific if she did. You know, and good for
Yeah.
you, because your research and your imagination brought that whole story is just awesome, and you brought that to the table, and Seth's running with it, and that's great. And you open up the door for another actress in the area if you do personify this story with that character in the series. You have yet another actress who's going to get a great role. So
Yeah, and I would be so delighted if that happened.
I have to add that your story is all too real, unfortunately, because I know of a couple of cases back in the 1970s in Connecticut where 5 little girls went missing and they were kidnapped, and they found the latter 2 bodies. However, the first 3 bodies were never found, and the police originally assumed, well, they probably just ran away, and they didn't even care. And then it took like a month or 2 later before they started to think differently. They just wouldn't even consider an abduction.
Well, and it's interesting. There's an interesting tie-in that occurred with my having come up with this background, because Charlie Alejandro, who is the retired trooper who did a lot of our training, when Seth mentioned this to her, because he discusses all of the detective work that happens on here, all of the things for the future that occur are things that are either currently in practice or in the works for the future. So if you see a piece of technology in here, if something happens in here, he's checked that out
Wow.
to make sure that this is something that they're looking at or considering or trying to come up with. And one of the interesting tie-ins, however, is that Charlie had her own Carrie in her life, who was in fact a girl who was her friend, who disappeared while she was in high school. And yeah, it was pretty shocking to find that out. But that is a factor also in her life with being a trooper.
sometimes the subconscious between creative people just takes over, and you know, you might be talking with someone saying, you know, I have an idea for a project for you, and then the person says, but that's my real life, who, you know, and they get very freaked out. And That's happened a few times with me, and that's just terrific that you guys tuned into each other, and you're tuned into the other people involved with this project, even people that you may not interact with on a daily basis in your life, but you are tuned into this kind of group consciousness. That's very exciting.
And Seth likes to sort of test the actors to make sure we're on top of it and we know who the characters are. He sent me an email when he was writing season 3 scripts, and it said, I want you to do some homework. I want you to look back at season 1, which I was only part of in the last episode, and sort of review what happened 20 years earlier. And just tell me what your character was doing 20 years earlier. And I wrote him a huge email of what my character was doing 20 years earlier, and he wrote back, are you spying on me? Is there a bug in my bedroom? He said, you wrote everything that I just incorporated into the script. He said it was scary how well I knew the character. But
Same wavelength.
yeah, exactly. So we are really trained to not just be handed the scripts and then work with the facts, but actually think about our character and know our characters really well.
Not necessarily on this series, but on other series, the actor becomes the keeper of the flame of the character because if the show runs enough years, eventually there's turnover in the writing staff, the production staff. Only the actor in most cases would stay the same, so they'd be in charge of their character.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And I also wanted to say with the character development days that we mentioned in the previous episode, and those were extremely intense in that Seth would actually sit down with a list of questions, and we would be expected to know all about our character and also all about anybody that we worked with. Wow. So I had to answer questions about the DAs and how I met them and what I knew about them and what their training was, because I should have checked that out. I was a detective, so I should have known these people very well, and I had worked many cases with them, so therefore I should be apprised of who they were. And we were later on actually quizzed on other characters' answers. So if we were sitting there while that person was asked, okay, where did you go to school? How old are you? Then later on, if I know that character personally, he would ask me, and he would say, okay, so how old is D.A. Waller?
Which is such a luxury because so many times you go to the set of an independent film or production and you meet your husband moments before you start filming your scene. Right. The guy playing your husband or your child. And
sounds like a drunk wedding. Hey, let's meet up and get married.
Yeah. So it's just such a luxury to have a relationship and have a connection, and I think that comes across on the screen. I think that's what makes Family Problems so successful, at least in season 1. I think that connection between the actors is really, like you were saying, it just sets this show above the rest.
But also one of the things that has come out of that, sort of grown out naturally, is the fact that we call each other about our characters as well. If we're working on something together, we may actually call each other and talk about it and work on it on the phone. And I've done that definitely with other actors as well. And you're able to achieve a level of richness and realism with that I don't think is as easy to achieve, at least otherwise. And it really is luxury. It's a beautiful thing.
That's great. Well, it's not just a luxury; it's hard work. It's a luxury and it's hard work, because, and kudos to the cast for doing the work, because as a director myself, you hope that you get actors like this who are going to come in and apply themselves and get excited about the project and bring their A game. And that starts really with the writing. If the writing connects with the actors, that's just great. And now I'm going to say a question, I guess. But where do you guys see, is there any other projects, just to get away from Family Problems for just a moment, because you guys are so fascinating as actors, is there anything else going on with your careers that you can mention or you'd like to mention?
Well, I did a short with Angelwood Pictures and Seth over the summer that's supposed to be coming out next month. It was a horror.
Okay.
My first time doing a horror short. It's called Margaret, and I play Margaret, a woman who in the 1950s finds her husband cheating on her, and she ends his life and his lovers and kills herself. Wow. And then spends all of her days as a ghost haunting the office, killing and torturing all men who cheat on their wives. So it was a super fun thing to do because I'd never done anything like that before.
Yeah.
That is set to come out, I think, in November.
Wow.
And I have another short I just got cast in at Emerson called The Interview. I'll be shooting in November as well. And then the season 2 airs November 14th of Family Problems. That's coming out next month. And then we start actually shooting season 3 at the end of next month. So It's happening all really fast. It
I mean-
keeps us quite busy.
Any
Yeah.
particular reason why it's back to back? And I was going to ask that
Yes,
question.
actually, in season 2, we had a location that we were able to use for the police department in the future, and that location could be gone. It's an empty building right now that could be leased out. So we are trying to quickly, even though we have months of time, get the future scenes in the police department shot for season 3 before we lose that location. So basically, it's just a location issue.
So you're going to hold off on season 3 until later on, or just air it soon after 2, or just?
I
have
think
these
he's.
scenes
I think
first?
he's planning on airing season 3 in the May time frame. So we have plenty of time to shoot. He just wants to. I think he just wants to film what happens in the future first, as soon as he can, just to make sure we still have that location for the continuity.
That's good.
Yeah.
So season 2 will begin to air on November the 14th, but we'll probably already be filming by the time that starts for season 3 in order to make use of the location that we have.
Yeah. Do you have any other projects that you'd like to mention? Anything you can mention?
There's not a lot I can talk about right now. I can say that I have been asked to reprise my role as Phyllis, the world's worst stage mother in World's Worst Director.
Yep.
So dear Phyllis, that everybody loved so much, will be coming back,
Wow.
which is fun.
Yep.
And I understand also Seth has another project he wants me to play a character in. I can't even say what the character is, actually. But he has a project, Lungs, which is another series, and I will be playing a character in that as well, ultimately. And I have some other things on the plate coming up, but I can't talk about them at this point, unfortunately.
That is the thing with actors. Sometimes you're cast in something and it's like mum's a word. Good for you. And that's why we ask, can you mention stuff? Because sometimes you just can't. That pre-production development, people don't want to jinx the
Right.
project, whatever. John, anything going on with you?
Unfortunately, no. Between part-time jobs, paying bills, this is all I got right now. It's
Okay.
that and sleep, pretty
Yeah.
much. Sleep.
Well, hopefully this is the first of many roles when you have a lighter workload.
Hopefully, yeah. Either a lighter workload or money for drugs or something to keep me going. I don't know. It's one or the other. So.
Or get paid acting. Best of both worlds.
That'd be
Yay.
wonderful. I would love to
that.
do that, but yeah.
Well, John, you're
Yeah.
a modest guy. You did get a degree in acting, right? From
University of Michigan. Yep. I have a BFA in acting. Best 5 years of my life, actually.
nice. Well, what was there any plays or any productions at that school that you remember? It's like, man, that was a good time. Or?
There was a lot. I mean, it seemed like I was always in something.
Yeah.
We did the staples like Our Town.
Right.
Any Shakespeare play that I can get my hands on, I'd love to do. But didn't have a whole lot of film experience. We had a couple of classes, and pretty much Family Problems has been the only, film, TV, one of the only film, TV experiences I've had since moving to Massachusetts. So it's been fun. It's,
Good.
enjoy it.
Well, this is filmed and it's going to be on TV, so there you go.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Talk about the differences between theater and film acting, or even TV acting. Is Michael Caine, the great actor, says that stage acting is acting with a scalpel, and film acting is acting with a laser. And do you guys find any resonance in that statement, or any nuances of because you all have stage experience? So any differences when you're going from that stage where you have to project and reach the back row, with your voice, to that on camera, where the camera, especially with high def now, sees every little nuance, every little thing that you're doing.
It's a completely different animal.
Yeah.
I did only theater in my 20s, and then I took a break, and when I came back, when Plymouth Rock Studios was coming to town, I started studying under Kevin Lassett. He was brought in by the studio to train actors in the area for film and TV and for auditioning, and I had never really done that before. And it was completely different. There's a stillness to it as opposed to a exaggeratedness to it. So to be large and loud as opposed to being still and quiet and internalizing more, it's almost a completely different study, I found.
Yes.
Well, and I think there's a degree of, you can tell me if you find this as well, both of you, but I think there's a degree of honesty and truthfulness that you can achieve with film that you also don't have the constraint of having to reach the back row because the camera brings the back row right to you.
Yes.
And so if you want to have a very realistic internal life, you don't have to push that out in order to make it something larger. The camera is going to pick up on it right where you are. And especially if you start to learn more about the framing and you know how the shot's going to be framed, how close the shot's going to be, you can make use of that. There actually are still levels within what we do in film work. It's just they're not so broad as they might be in theater. The difference between theater and film, there are degrees to which you have a reaction on your face, for example, be larger or smaller, depending on how close the shot's going to be.
This is terrific. You know so much. Having done this web series, just to articulate this is great. It's very informative, I think, as an actor myself, to hear what you're saying. And I smile because every time Natasha looks at me, I think I'm being investigated.
Are you?
I feel like
You haven't done anything wrong. You have nothing to worry about.
it. The day's still young.
Well, I don't know if Wendy finds this, but I take some of the cop training home with me. I mean, I notice more things now when I'm walking around than I used to. I mean, I'm just more aware of my surroundings and what people are doing and what to watch.
Right.
And it's interesting. And sometimes I think that you wish you could turn that off again.
How is it to watch like a cop show or a law show now that you've had this experience?
It's fascinating.
Are you
It's
nitpicking
truly
it?
fascinating.
Yes, we nitpick.
Yeah, we nitpick it totally. And we laugh about it. And then when we end up having another training with Charlie and Mel, we say, oh, did you see that episode of whatever it was? Did you notice when he did that? Oh, it was so bad, you know. And we do have fun with it now.
That's great. It's, when you say an actor has a sensitivity of a regular person times maybe 5 or 10 at least, because you're so tuned in to the human consciousness and the psyche and the human condition that you walk around the street and you feel those vibes from people. That person's having a bad day. That couple's on the outs. That guy just won $5 in the lottery or something. You can sense things, right? As actors, we're very sensitive to other people's situations and empathy, if you would.
Yeah, you really have to channel into a psyche. And I have a question in general. Would you say that it's easier to play a villain or a hero?
I wouldn't say it's easier. I've played a few villains in my time. It's not easier. It's fun because it's something I'm not, but even a hero is something I'm not either, so it's
I think
sort
they're
of two
similar. I think they
extremes.
both do what they, unless you're a pure 100% evil cartoon character villain, a person who might be perceived of as villainous thinks they're doing the right thing. They are driven by some force, whether it's love, ambition, greed, there's something, and fears and insecurities, there's something, we all share that. We're all driven by those same things. It's just what do they do, to cross that line, to get what they want. But they think it's all for a reason that they believe in. And so does a hero. I think they're similar. They're just driven individuals,
Heroes cross lines too. I mean, we love the huge, even the comic book heroes that are out there. They don't stay within the norm of, good behavior. They are outside the lines, basically. So I think to classify them as opposites is a little too simple, and you can see they're perhaps opposite ends of the same spectrum, and they all have the same rich internal things going on. I think that as John mentioned, though, I do think sometimes it is fun to be allowed to play someone evil. So
I think it's that inner conflict, because even if you're bad or good, like you mentioned, if you believe in what you're doing but they're bad things, there's still some level of recognition on that person's mind that it's bad, but I need to do it.
It's justified.
It's that conflict that really makes it interesting to watch.
I would say it's fun in this show to play characters with such intensity.
Right.
Yeah.
So, these are people for whom the stakes are extremely high pretty much all of the time, in different ways. So that's tremendously enjoyable, to be allowed to go to those extremes of emotion and to push yourself to those places and to see how you can find that in yourself for each character, I think is truly wonderful and delightful. We're very lucky to be doing what we're doing here.
Awesome.
And I hope that people, when they watch season 2 coming up, they'll find that as well.
I actually want to ask you something about season 1, and I asked this about the previous guests as well. What were your favorite parts of season 1, or your favorite scenes, or your favorite moments?
Well, I'll jump in because I didn't have that many scenes in season 1 other than interrogation scenes. So, but I did have a fair number of those. I would say for me, My favorite places are where my character either changes tactics for some reason, or where she suddenly starts to empathize with the person that she's interrogating. I mean, interestingly enough, there is a certain degree of empathy involved in interrogation anyway.
Right.
It's a technique. But there are a few moments in there where she really actually starts to connect with the person that she's interrogating in a big way. And I think those are some of the most fascinating and wonderful, powerful moments for me.
Nice.
What about you?
I was only in one scene for season 1, so I can't say it was any scene that I was in. But I did like the interrogation scenes because they were so intense. I mean, the whole show is very intense, but all the interrogation scenes sort of came at the end and really drove it home each episode. So it's just that intensity that really is just, I enjoyed watching. So.
And I didn't come on board until the season finale, so I was just a viewer for the first 12 episodes or 11 episodes. But as a viewer, I gotta say, it was just that the intimacy, this look at this family and what happened to them, and you related to them and you connected with them, and somehow that happened in these 13-minute episodes. I don't know how, but magically Seth made that happen, and you connected and you couldn't wait to see what happened to them next and how they handled what was going on around them. And that's why I watched each week before I was even part of the show.
Well, I do want to mention for people out there that there's going to be a combined episode that's made up of all of the other episodes so that it becomes much easier for people to watch. I think that all told, when you put all of the episodes together without the credits and things like that, it runs about 2 hours. So it makes it very easy for people to catch up. There will also be a synopsis provided of season 1. So, and that will run, I think, about 20 minutes with a voiceover that will help people catch up on the necessary plot points so that they can more easily jump in with season 2 if they wish to do that.
That's great.
And it's a really great way to watch the show because at the end there's always a hook about a cliffhanger, what's going to happen next. And if you're dying to know and you don't want to wait a week, this is a great way to watch season 1 and get your answers, sort of. Well, not your answers, but...
Does it feel like One Piece when you're watching the film as a whole instead of like 12 parts or however many parts it is?
We haven't seen it yet.
We
It hasn't
haven't
been
seen
released
the
yet.
entire thing yet done that way.
And Seth's group is called, is it Angelwood
Pictures.
Pictures?
Yes.
So if people Google Angelwood Pictures, they'll find Seth Chitwood's whole productions and his great cast and everything.
That's right.
I just want to make, we're almost running out of time, Roland, but I did want to make a quick statement. It's not really a question, but it's great to see writing and powerful cast members that are female, that aren't such and such's girlfriend, such and such's wife.
Absolutely.
This is awesome. Yeah, definitely.
We think so too.
Yes, we do. We're delighted with that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it must be
great.
monotonous to always have to be like the love interest. I mean, in general.
You're right. And Seth does write. I mean, Teresa really, as Molly, is the main character in season 1, and then he brings in all of these other female leads that are their own person. They're standing on their own. Yeah. We love that.
The test is the Bredgedell test, I think it's called.
I don't know what that is.
It's a test where you have 2 women in the same scene together discussing something that's not related to a man.
That's
That's
awesome.
a Bredgedell test, and a lot of films fail that test.
That's true. But this one doesn't. Pretty much every episode is about other things.
That's great. That's really cool. And it's just a credit to him and to the actresses and the actor that he picked that he can do so much with the character development on this series.
I think that's all the time that we have for today's episode. I want to thank the 3 of you for being on for these last 2 episodes.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you so much.
And I recommend that everyone watch Family Problems. And also watch this show. We'll see you next week.